Well, hello and welcome to this video case study for selling a business, and the whole purpose of this is to show you quite quickly how financial planning can help in this kind of situation. So let's dive into the content. Just before we get started, I just want to give you a brief overview as to some strengths and weaknesses of the financial planning process. So what we're trying to do here is to give you some clarity about the future. So ultimately, do you have enough money to live the life you want without running out of money? So what financial planning allows you to do is, once you have that clarity, you can see where you are now and where you are where your money is going in the future, given your situation, and some alternative courses of action. And then we can focus on taking different types of action in different situations, testing alternative scenarios. And in addition, we can show you what might happen if something goes wrong. So what we're aiming to do really with this is give you clarity into the future, and with the ultimate aim of security no matter what happens in the future. Now, there are some weaknesses to financial planning, and number one is we cannot predict the future. So what financial planning does is makes cautious but linear assumptions about how your future may pan out. So we'll make assumptions about inflation, about investment growth, about how and when money comes into your pocket, and ultimately those assumptions won't prove to be exactly correct. So we have to be cautious about the future, and we have to understand that the future isn't linear. It won't grow at the same rate every year, year in, year out. So what we do to alleviate that is to stress test different scenarios. So we'll show you the implication of a dramatic fall in the stock market, or if your investments don't perform as expected. Okay, so I just want to give you a brief overview as to what we're going to do in this scenario. So we're looking at Mr. and Mrs. Business. Now they're both age 60 now, and they're thinking about retiring. So think about your own situation, how it relates to this. Bear in mind that every situation is very different, and we've taken away the complexity just to give you some simplicity for this case study. Now, basically, because they're approaching retirement, they've got 5 years until they want to stop work and do something else, and they're considering selling their business. Now, whether or not you can sell your business is a different question than we're going to answer in this case study, but we're going to assume that their business has got some cash value. Now, what most people in their situation do is they approach their accountant and potentially a business sale agent and ask them what their business is worth, and then they start the negotiation with various third parties to potentially see what they can get from the market, and go through the due diligence, and ultimately come to some arrangement where there's a contract to sell and a lump sum or income comes from that sale. What we're going to do in this situation is flip that on its head and say, don't forget about, but put to one side how much your business is worth, and look instead at how much your business needs to be worth in order to be guaranteed of a future, secure future. So really, the two things are very important. You want to know what your business is worth, but you also want to know what it needs to be worth in order to guarantee a secure future. And actually, in my experience, many people shy away from selling the business, or put off the day when they retire from their business, because they're worried about whether they're going to have enough money no matter what, because they may have had a very good life while they've been working, and they may not feel confident that they can stop that tap of income in the future. So what we're going to do in this scenario is show them exactly how much their business needs to sell for after tax, to allow them to be sure of a secure future. And they've got some various considerations that they're thinking about. Ultimately, can they afford to retire? How much do they need to sell the business for? Whether they should invest the money, and in what way? And ultimately, will they run out? They want to be sure of a secure future. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is switch to my financial planning software, and we're going to look at their position. So this is Bob and Carol Business, and their situation as we see it at the moment. So we've vastly simplified this scenario just to give you a flavour as to what the financial planning process can do. So in this situation, they have a property, their house. They've got no mortgage. They've got a business, but we've stripped out the value for the current scenario, and then they've both got a joint bank account with about £30,000 in it, and they've each got a pension plan. Now, of course, every situation is different. Everyone's got different levels of assets. It's very rare that they're going to be split down the middle like this, but I'm just showing you for the purpose of the illustration we're going to show you here. So, okay, so put those together. What we're going to start to do now is to make some assumptions about the future. So, okay, so here are their assets split into the whole in a pie chart. So you can see here that on the biggest asset they hold is their house, and then they've got these pension plans which are accessible at the moment because they're aged over 55, and they can now start to draw on those pensions if they want to in the future. So one thing to say before we get going is that their house is not really an asset in financial planning terms. Yes, it is valuable, and it would be something to pass on to the next generation, and you can see that reflected here in their total net worth. But in terms of planning for the future, it's not going to be useful to them because they're actually going to have to spend money on it. They're going to have to pay council tax, maintenance, utility bills, and whatever else that is needed to run a property. The only time that's ever going to be useful to them is if they perhaps downsize in the future and release some equity and some capital to use to spend on their for future income or just to spend. So what we're interested in is the blue side here, what the pensions can do to them or for them, and ultimately if we can do anything with this green item, which is not currently reflected here, do they need to sell their business for anything? Now, bear in mind that not everybody has to sell their business in order to achieve their retirement dreams. So if you've taken money outside of the business over the years and diversified and put it into things like pensions and other investments and property, then you may be in a situation where you don't actually need to sell, and that gives you other options to consider when it comes to retirement. So in the bottom right hand corner, what we can see here is our assumptions after inflation and how we can see that their assets may change based on those assumptions in the future. So you can see that they've got 5 years to go. So they're both age 60 now. They're planning to stop work and sell the business in 5 years' time. And you can see here that at that stage, they're going to convert their pension into a traditional annuity. And that's going to deplete the blue side of the pie chart, and it's going to gradually eat into their capital over time. Now, bear in mind that there are many options with pensions. You can do flexible pensions these days. You can keep the money going and draw from it in a flexible, tax efficient way. That's a conversation for another day. We're trying to simplify things for this case study here. But what you can see is some red start to appear. So anything that goes below the line means that the system is starting to say, well, hold on a minute, we're running out of money here, and we're going to have to dip into a nominal overdraft. So you can see that there is an issue on the horizon here where this blue is going to start to run out. Now maybe they could use their property at that stage, but more than likely they're going to need to generate something from the business to be able to afford to take a stable, secure retirement. Okay, let's take this on a step and look at their income. So at the moment they've got quite a nice lifestyle. They both take £10,000 income in a form of salary from their business, and then they get dividends which are taxed at a lower rate from the business as well. So you can see they get a gross income of £120,000 a year, which is a very nice lifestyle for them at the moment. Now clearly in the future that's going to stop. So you can see here we're projecting their future income for the rest of their lives to age 100, and you can see that the light blue in this situation is the dividend income, which is going to stop. And the red currently is their earned income from their salaries. That's going to convert to being pension income and state pension from age 66 onwards. So you can see quite quickly from that chart that there's going to be a cliff edge where their income is going to drop off. And this is the kind of thing that stops people from retiring in the first place, because they have a decent lifestyle now. They're used to getting a nice level of income coming in. They're used to spending money without really thinking about it, and they can see a time when that income's going to stop, and it makes them pause for thought and think, well, can I actually afford to retire in this situation? So now there's a couple of other things to think about here, in that tax is a big issue here. So they're using their dividend allowances, and they're not paying as much tax as they would have done had they taken all of their income as earned income. But if you take this forward to the day when they stop work from their business, their income is going to dramatically reduce, and therefore so is their tax. So we have to take that into consideration. Their tax bill is going to probably go down to basic rate tax in the future, and that's an important thing to think about. And obviously, our financial planning process takes that into consideration. So when you come to retirement, you want to be thinking more about your overall income position rather than your gross income position before tax. So think about what is actually in your pocket rather than what is coming in before tax. Now, the other side to their situation is that they've got lifestyle expenditure. So currently we've got them spending £50,000 a year, but as you can see, they've also got about £14,000 a year in tax. So their total expenditure is £64,000. So if we were to put their income and their expenditure together, clearly they've got a big differential at the moment, which would go into savings in the next few years. So they've got a good chance to put decent amounts of money away, about £50,000 a year, into savings, investments and so on, before they retire. But once they retire, once their income stops and their business stops, they're going to be in a deficit. So we're looking at about £20,000 a year deficit once their state pension comes in today's terms. So clearly that will be a concern for them in the future. So let's put all that together into what we call a lifetime cash flow forecast. So that's putting all the fundamentals of their situation together. That's their income, their expenses, their assets, and if they had any liabilities. So here we have the start of this process. So the blue is their income for any tax year, and the red is the expenditure for any tax year. And you can see going forward, the next few years they're going to have an excess of income over expenditure, but once their business stops, they're going to have more expenses than their income can bear. Now, what happens in that situation is you start to eat into the capital. So what we need to do is put this lifetime cash flow forecast together and work out whether they're going to run out of money. So that's what this chart does. So currently they're about 60. They're going to accumulate capital for the next 5 years. Then they're going to cash in their pensions into a stable, secure income. Now, whether they do that at that time is another matter, but for the purpose of this exercise, let's assume they have done, into a guaranteed income for life, and then they're going to be sat on a large amount of savings, which at the moment we're assuming just sits in a bank account and doesn't do much for their future in terms of, it's there, accessible, but it's not growing, and obviously inflation is eating into that over time. And you can clearly see that £20,000 spending extra a year, plus the fact that their money's not growing, means that eventually they're going to run out of money at about age 80. Now, of course, if they don't live past age 80, that's not a problem, but the average age is something like 86, 88, and of course half the people in the population live longer than that and live to a very long age. So we're projecting forward to age 100, and in this situation it doesn't look great, does it? Because you think, well, okay, I'm going to run out of money. So what are the solutions in this situation? Well, they can take more risk with their money, so they can invest their savings to hopefully grow. They can spend less money now or spend less money in the future. They can put back their retirement age, so perhaps retiring a few years later and extending the life of their money that way. Or of course they can sell their business. And in this situation we're assuming that they're going to be able to get their business in a state where they can find a buyer and release a lump sum. So we've shown that scenario in what I'm going to show you now. So basically what our software has done is assume they take an investment out, and that's going to grow at 6% a year, so greater than inflation over time, split between income and capital growth. And the question is, how much do they need to sell their business for in order to be sure of never running out of money? So let's show you that on the chart. So we want to do exactly the same situation, but we want to create a lump sum of money in this situation so that they never run out of money. Well, let's go back to the current position and we can actually show you that calculated on a chart. Well, the answer in this situation is about £600,000. So if I was to show you the calculations, it might take a little bit of time, but here's the answer. So let's look at the investment plan itself. We've assumed that they take out a simple investment account. Obviously, it would be a bit more sophisticated if we were to arrange this, but for the purposes of this case study, it's £606,224. So that is how much that Mr. and Mrs. Business need to sell their business for after tax as a lump sum, to be sure that they won't run out of money in the future. So that's how we get to this situation where they're age 100 and unfortunately the last cheque bounces. So that's the kind of thing that we can do with a financial plan. We can show them how their money will look into the future, and make the kind of calculations that will show them exactly how much money will be needed with those sort of once only life or death situations, like buying and selling a business. So clearly we can look at a number of other situations to be more cautious. What if the stock market crashes? What if investments don't perform as expected? And we could come up with different figures. But it's a good place to start when you're thinking about selling a business, because it gives you a good flavour as to how much you need to be sure of never run out of money. And surely that's the most important number to know before you sell your prized asset that gives you the best form of income. So that's the end of this demonstration. Obviously, if you've got any questions to do with selling a business or financial planning in general, please give us a call. Obviously, our details are below and scattered around the website. We'd be happy to help. Okay, so what you've seen in this video is just one part of the Prosper service that we offer at Woodruff Financial Planning. So just a brief overview of the Prosper service then. What we're trying to do is bring together two things. The first is a financial plan, which you've seen already in the video, and that will help you to get some clarity around the future. And we can also help you to manage any investments that you may you need to run, such as pension schemes or other types of invested assets. So the Prosper service gives you clarity around where you are now, with the idea of looking into the future to see where your money is going. So once you have that clarity, it'll give you a good way of visualizing where your money is going, and then we can start to look at different alternatives as to how you can make choices now that will have an impact in the short, medium and long term in your future. So it's all based around sensible, realistic assumptions, stress tested against realistic expectations for the future. When you have that clarity, you can then start to focus your attention and resources in specific areas, and this is where the different scenarios come into play. So we can examine as many different scenarios as are relevant to your situation, and examine how these different ideas may work out in practice. The ultimate goal is to aim to get you to a strategic overview and make the right decisions for your finances now and in the future. Really, with the main aim of the whole service is to give you financial freedom. So when you know that you've got some financial freedom in the future, you can start to relax, and you can work hard on making sure that you live the life you want, and that means perhaps spending more money. So hopefully that's been of interest. We're here to help. If you need to speak to us about the issues in this video, please give us a call.